So, you guys did it. In a matter of one video, you helped me reach 2,000 subscribers, and as promised, I gotta keep my side of the bargain. So that means, soon, I will start streaming. I'm in the process of getting everything set up, it won't take too long, I just gotta find the time to do it. And that also means my Discord is now open again for another 100 people, if you don't want to pay for memberships. This will be the last time it's ever going to be open. And if you don't make it in with one of these 100 slots that are now open, you can just pay the $1 membership on my YouTube members to get permanent access to the Discord, including all the VIP channels and whatever benefits I choose to add later down the line. Anyway, our next subscriber goal will be 10,000 subs. Very simple, very easy, let's hope we can get that in the next 2 years. So anyway, on to the video. We're going to be looking at Harmon because he thought it would be funny to shit-talk our main man Etsuno, the guy behind Devil May Cry, I believe 4 and 5, and Dragon's Dogma 1 and 2. And personally, how dare he shit-talk the man behind Dragon's Dogma? I've never played Devil May Cry, maybe one day I will.
Hideaki Itsuno has left Capcom! Devil May Cry is done, Dragon's Dogma is done, no longer can people hide behind, well, maybe Itsuno's gonna make a new Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 5 is one of the best games of the generation.
First of all, look at the smile on this fat bastard, look at how excited he was to make this video. That's pretty rare for Harmon to have a smile on his face right at the beginning of a video. Second of all, what type of sheeny curse are you trying to put on us, mate? You're sitting there looking like you're trying to cast spells. What are you trying to summon? Huh? What type of sheeny curse are you gonna put on us? What are you gonna do? Share it with us. I wanna know. I wanna know what type of magic you know, little man.
Devil May Cry is one of the best IPs in gaming, other than the first one, which is not very good. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, the Itsuno thing was ridiculous. It always has been. It always will be. But Hideaki Itsuno is absolutely one of those people that was hyped up to be something he wasn't.
What? He's a good developer, he makes good games and that's pretty much it. I don't really see much of an issue. Even with his worst game, Dragon's Dogma 2, it was still a pretty good game. A lot of people seem to enjoy it, and on average it has around, I think, 2,000, 3,000 people playing roughly. And at some point, it's probably going to get a DLC. Even though with him leaving the studio and him not overseeing the game, I'm sure the game will still be fine, and the series, I don't know. It depends on who they put in charge of those series. It may be better, it may be worse. Capcom has, I would argue, a pretty good track record recently. They're not the worst developers on the planet.
One of the greatest talents in the industry, when his biggest games are all just knockoffs of a far superior one. Hideki Kamiya and the original Devil May Cry. That's right, Devil May Cry 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all inferior to Devil May Cry, which is...
So, the first one, as you said earlier, was bad, and now it's somehow superior than the rest. I can't verify that myself, as I don't ever play the games, I don't ever plan on playing them, but, I don't know. I think a lot of people would beg to differ on that one, Harmon. But let's hear your reasoning on why you think that.
Is in of itself a beta test for the original Bayonetta. So,
personally, I believe that is a bit of a hot take.
Again, the big milestone video game franchise DMC is overhyped, underdelivered, and just not even really worth playing, honestly, if we're being completely bluntly honest with you.
I thought it was Monster Hunter that was the biggest selling thing in Capcom, but it turns out to be Street Fighter. I was honestly expecting Monster Hunter, but apparently Iceborne was right behind both of them. That's honestly insane that it sold that much. It really goes to show how well they did Monster Hunter Worlds.
But no, gamers had to do this thing where they had to hype up DMC as one of the premier action games.
After covering Harmon for so long, I've kind of realized that he just constantly says the same thing over and over again. The media has to hype up this because they hate Nintendo. People that don't know what good games are, they only hype it up because they don't want Nintendo to succeed. This and that because whoever wants to shill for this and that company or game. It's always going to be the same thing over and over again. Nothing new. No actual constructive criticism. Maybe one day.
As one of the best IPs in gaming, when in reality, not only is it anything special, it's downright bad. Okay. This really needs to be said more. DMC was not a very good franchise. DMC 5 was awful. So,
Imagine if Nintendo made Devil May Cry. Wouldn't that be amazing? Harmon would love the series. He would love every game in it and only slightly criticize them. And then say, no matter what, the newest installment is always the best. Can we gaslight Harmon into believing that other franchises that would not normally be Nintendo exclusives are Nintendo exclusives? I think that would be a very interesting thing to do to him.
It's interesting to see how people reacted to the failure of Dragon's Dogma 2, because I came out and said immediately that, like, oh, this game is going to be a failure.
I would say the game is not a failure, purely because it probably made a lot of money and they're working on either a DLC or an expansion. They normally would have released a DLC by now, so fingers crossed it's a big expansion like Iceborne. Come on, baby. Make Dragon's Dogma 2 great. But in actual public perception of the game, it's an absolute failure, as the game is very divided by people that don't really care about the optimization and just want to enjoy the game, and people that will not play the game because the game is so terribly optimized, which makes sense. I don't blame them for not playing. Like, even I'm running it at max settings with all the best settings available, and I'm only getting 60 FPS. I don't think I actually have ray tracing on. I could be wrong, but I haven't checked since I haven't played it recently.
It's not going to do very well, it's been too long, but no, like, Capcom fanboys, the DMC cocksuckers, they really tried fabricating this narrative that Dragon's Dogma is one of the best action RPGs ever made, that Itsuno was, could have delivered one of the best gaming experiences ever, that this was an amazing experience if you could just get through all the jam, right?
Well, there aren't many other games like Dragon's Dogma. The only one that actually comes to mind is Shadow of the Colossus, that allows you to freely climb up monsters just like in Dragon's Dogma. And especially the way that Dragon's Dogma 2's world handles the way that monsters fall over, and that's actually really cool, because they actually collide with certain elements like trees and all. It was really cool. I liked that part of the game. But those quote-unquote Capcom fanboys that you're on about were still criticizing the game for having terrible optimization, not having much content, and that was pretty much it, alongside the microtransactions. I almost forgot that one. I don't care too much about the microtransaction thing, as it's pretty common for Capcom to add stuff like that to the game. Maybe the port crystal was a bit far, but I don't play many other Capcom series besides Monster Hunter, so I can't tell you from experience of how bad it is compared to other games they've done it for.
That was always the narrative when it came to Dragon's Dogma. And then, when Dragon's Dogma 2 came out, what did we get? A basic rehash of the original game after a decade. Think about that for a second. You got the exact same game after a decade. While you were trying to convince people that Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild were the exact same game, they aren't.
From what I've heard from a lot of people, I'm sure some of them would really disagree with you on that one, Harmon. They did share a lot of similarities, even sharing the same world, and it was criticized for that. But just remember, don't fix what ain't broken.
You were hyping people up for Dragon's Dogma 2. A game that absolutely bombed that release so hard, even the most hardcore of Capcom cocksuckers couldn't damage control it. It was impossible. Nobody liked this game. So, of course, what ended up happening was that everybody just immediately brushed it under the rug and moved on to the next thing.
First of all, I like the game. Second of all, the game was a financial success from what we've heard. Third of all, I believe you like boys, don't you, Harmon?
Right. Of course, there was no new thing to move on to, but Dragon's Dogma 2 was quickly forgotten about. And now, almost several months later, I don't even remember when it came out, like last year, this year, who knows? Several months later, Itsuno has announced his departure from Capcom. Not long after they confirmed their commitment to DEI and bringing on Western directors onto their franchises.
I have not heard anything about this or like this. The last thing I heard from Capcom talking about future projects and what they're going to be doing with them was a poll where they talked about what the community wants to see most from those games, which was attractive characters and good gameplay. And I think right under that, the third place was good story. I don't think DEI ever will fit into that category of assisting those things to come true.
Now, the same idea that Con Man had when he produced Bionic Commando and DMC, right? The Devil May Cry reboot. right? They are doing the exact same thing they were doing a decade ago. You know, Capcom never went away.
As I said earlier, don't fix what ain't broken. They're doing that with Monster Hunter World to Monster Hunter Wilds. It looks like pretty much the same game with better graphics with some new and improved elements. They probably did the exact same thing for Devil May Cry. You can even use Nintendo in that example, as they're even doing that with Tears of the Kingdom.
This is the thing that really gets me about Capcom. And about, like, every major Japanese studio. Like, everybody delusionally believed that the studios were going to make a comeback, that they were putting out good games, that they were going to, like, come back and destroy Nintendo on PlayStation and Xbox, right? We would have a glorious return to, like, the PS2 era of just being able to make fun of Nintendo.
I don't think Capcom cares about Nintendo. They're in their new golden age by making actual good games that can go to most platforms except Nintendo because, you know, it's a weak platform. You can't really put many, let's just say, ambitious games on it.
Right. Like, everybody just assumed that would happen at some point. Right. That, like, the pendulum would shift and that, like, Capcom would just embarrass Nintendo over and over and over again. And, like, we would all just have a hearty chuckle at those childish, immature Nintendo fanboys, right?
Well, we are right now. We're having a bit of a chuckle at you, Harmon. Isn't that a bit funny? A bit silly, maybe?
That was what was supposed to happen, but it never did, right? The talent is leaving. The games are coming out. People are just beginning to notice that the lie that Capcom is a top-tier video game company is falling apart.
I don't know if I would say falling apart. They're about to release a new Monster Hunter game that looks incredibly good and a lot of people are very interested in. And I would say they've only ever really had one failure, and that was pretty much Dragon's Dogma 2 because it came out unoptimized, but it really depends on who you ask and what they think of the game.
And one of the most carefully constructed aspects of that lie, that people like Itsuno are hard at work at making new Devil May Cry games, is completely falling apart.
I think we need to give Harmon some credit. This man's been doing a lot of workouts in this video. This man has been shaking his arms all over the place. We really do need to give him some credit. Eventually, he'll go back to looking like himself from a couple years ago. You should look that up. Harmon looks very different in the past.
Like, who at Capcom could possibly produce new video games in 2024 that are worth caring about, right? You know, for the past several years, like, I remember when Bayonetta 3 came out, and, like, one of the big copes from the community, like, one of the big things, like, oh, DMC5 is better. Well, even if that was true, it's not. The game was old as dirt by that point anyway, and a sequel was nowhere in sight. So why exactly were fanboys so adamant that DMC5 was better? It was just a cope to keep you from noticing that Bayonetta, even by the third entry, was far superior than the entire 20-year legacy of DMC, right?
I don't know about you, but I've heard a lot more people talk about Devil May Cry more than Bayonetta. I also didn't know this, but apparently Bayonetta's not just available on Nintendo when it comes to its older versions of the franchise, so I don't know, I thought that was just something interesting when I was going through an emulator site. I found some ROMs of that, very cool. Maybe I'll go play it just to spite Harmon. And to say that Capcom hasn't made anything that's actually worth a damn in 2024 when Dragon's Dogma 2 was one of the biggest games, even with all of its flaws. Also, a bit of added context to mention this, but apparently Concord is being shut down in the next, couple of days. Huh, I guess I gotta somehow make a video on that. I always could cover Dreamcast Guy again, but I'm sure there's a lot of other clips of PlayStation fanboys losing their absolute shit. As I'm checking Twitter now, there seems to be a lot of people somewhat upset with the game's closure, but then again, it only sold 30,000 copies, and it was a nearly $200 million game in its budget. Anyway, we're gonna leave the video here. If you want to join the Discord, that's available, go do it now. If you can't do it now, you're gonna have to get a membership. So anyway, we'll see you all in the next video. Enjoy the rest of your day.